Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, and you're watching the Business Talk Library, and this is part two of Lies and Deception.
Your intros
Yes, lies and deception. So
these intros are just serious. So before last episode we were talking about the career piece. So let's jump right back into it. And just for people,
I guess for the new people.
That's what I was gonna say. For the new people that are joining us, give them context. What were we talking about?
All right. So for the new people joining us, my wife and I, we own several businesses, and one of the things that we made some big changes in the way we approach it because we realized we were kind of operating under some lies about what that should look like, and it was causing friction in our relationship. It was causing friction in the friendship that we have in our marriage, and so we were going through talking about what are some of those lies. So we talked about a couple last week. So definitely go back and check out that episode. But we're going to continue the conversation. And the last one we were talking about last week that we ran out of time for is, sometimes when you're starting a business, you have, maybe one person is more focused on the business and then the other person is, doing their career job. And a lot of times the lie that people believe is when the business starts getting attention and starts getting traction, the person who's doing the career job sometimes feels like, well, I'm not pulling my weight. I'm not doing enough to really help invest in our legacy. And it's almost like the one doing the job, what their contribution gets devalued as if is not as important, which I think that's a lie. And it's something that we had to work through because it was causing problems. So
agreed. And I think one of the things I would like to state also, and I went through this, is just the whole idea that having a job versus being an entrepreneur or owning a business is like, I mean, you just not doing something right if you don't have a business. You just, I don't know, you just a slacker. You just go to work, work your 9 to 5, come home, and that's it. But I think, I will say when you started your business, the consulting side of the business, you see now I've changed my tune from our business to your business. When you started your business last year, I will say, I think there was a part of me that kind of felt like, as you spend time around entrepreneurs and business owners, you're like, man, like this is it. People are grinding, people are working hard. Like, and sometimes you look at the career people and you're just like, what are you doing? Like, you just okay with where you are in life? Like, you don't have multiple streams of income. Like, what are you doing? And I think it was very humbling for me the last couple of weeks and just months have been very humbling for me because one of the things that I've realized is not everybody is cut out for entrepreneurship. Not everybody wants to do entrepreneurship. And I think over the last couple of months, that's one thing that I have learned is just look, like the idea of entrepreneurship is nice. And it's great if, hey, that's what you want to do. And hey, in some respects, when you think about building a career, hey, it's very different. But one of the things that I had to be honest with myself about is just I don't know that I necessarily am in the phase of my life where I don't want to do it. I don't want to do entrepreneurship right now. And I think that was a tough pill for me to swallow because there was a part of me that was still that kind of had that mindset of, you listen to Gary Vee and he's like, go sell everything. You better go to your garage and sell all this stuff and hustle, which Gary Vee does not say there's nothing wrong with, not being an entrepreneur. There's anything wrong with not being an entrepreneur. But what I want to say is I think that sometimes, there is kind of that idea where you feel like because you're working in a career that you're not doing enough. And I would disagree with that because I think when it comes to your career, and this is something I had to learn, right? When it comes to your career, there are, different things, different goals that you can set for yourself, growth, development opportunities. And like Terrell was saying, is just, hey, when it comes to your contribution as your team, to your team as a teammate, what you need and for example, for us in this season, like you were talking about last week, like what we needed was stability for Terrell to go put in the faith and sow the seeds that he needed to sow for the business to grow. And in a matter of, a little over a year of being in business, we've been able to replace his income. And for me, in some respects, Terrell makes more money than I do in my job, which, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. The whole point of this is, hey, I feel like I have been able to support the team by providing a stable environment for him to be able to go create that system, develop that process. So then, we generate that income for the business. So I really think it's just appreciating that effort, because if you are, the spouse in your marriage and who is working, and you're the spouse in the marriage who's working, and your spouse is the one doing the business, don't knock yourself down. You are contributing because you're providing that stable environment for your spouse to go do that and to be able to take that risk, especially if they're doing it, full time.
Yeah. I mean, and I want to unpack that a little bit too, because the first question that comes to mind for me is, at what point did it not become cool to have a job? Like,
honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I guess it's just the whole, that's actually a really good question, because I remember when having a job was like the thing. Even when I think about just as an immigrant child, when we're like, oh, my son is working for Microsoft, or my son is working at Apple. It's a big deal to have a job. Because I remember even when I got the job in GE, my mom was telling everyone, oh, she works at GE, she works at General Electric. It's a pretty big deal. But I think just over the years, maybe as people have talked about having multiple streams of income and the whole, the Instagram entrepreneur idea where people are this glamour, I think what has driven it, honestly, is people have seen if I think about someone like Tai Lopez, people have seen the results of entrepreneurship on a highlight reel, but people haven't really seen the work that it entails. So I think people have wanted what the results give you, the lifestyle of entrepreneurship if you are successful, but they haven't seen the work. So I think that's kind of been the thing, the glamorized idea when it comes to entrepreneurship of all this, benefits and this lifestyle that comes with it. But it really is hard work, because I have a lot of friends that are business owners, and hey, every day for them is I feel like when you have a job, you kind of have some structure or boundaries, right? Because you're working within the parameters of what the company has, and you're getting guidance, and you're getting targets, and you're getting quarterly goals, and you're reviewing all that stuff. As an entrepreneur, you got to set all that stuff for yourself. You have to motivate yourself. You have to be the motivation for yourself. And so a lot of it requires discipline. And I've seen, some of my friends who, 1 month they'll make $50,000, the other month they're making $2. And so it's just are you in the right mindset to really be able to stick it out even when things are not working, and develop that discipline for yourself?
Yeah. And I do think that, in some respects, at one point, when, from my background, I didn't really come from a family that had professional careers. I mean, either military, or a different odd jobs where no one was going kind of in the corporate route. That wasn't the normal. There were there was a few here and there, but that wasn't the normal in my family. Yeah. So when I was pursuing that, to where it's just man, that was a very great goal, and achieving that. And even just with, I said, what my first job, the amount of money that I was making right out of college, I mean, it was a huge win. And then as I began to climb in my career and stuff like that, at some point, I started noticing people, I get around people who were business owners. Now, part of it is, I think that there were some people who saw entrepreneurs, the results that entrepreneurs were getting, the lifestyle that some entrepreneurs were living. And then I guess to try to motivate themselves to go be an entrepreneur, they had to start, trash talking a career. Oh, if you have a job, then you ain't doing nothing. And one of the things that I realized early on when I got around a lot of entrepreneurs is there were a lot of people that were trying to be entrepreneurs, whether it was network marketing, or they were starting some online business, or they were selling this, selling that. And they were talking about how bad a job was. And at the same time, I thought it was interesting, because I'm like, okay, I was in the early stages of being an entrepreneur, and I was still working my career. I'm like, I made way more money than them in my career. Yeah. And I was figuring out how to be an entrepreneur, to where I'm just like, man, if you keep, something was off to me. To me, it's it just didn't make sense, because a lot of the people that I saw hating on a career, I didn't really see them making much progress in their business. Yeah. And to where it's just it's one of those things that I realized, there's no way possible that you can walk in hatred towards a career and just excel as a business owner. Because I'm you can't have hatred. You can't have, I guess you say, hatred and praise can't operate in the same brain. Like you
Agreed.
can't hate on people who have a job, because one of the things that I realize is if you want to grow your business, eventually you're going to create jobs. You need to hire people who have a job. But it's like if you're
Who are
known,
willing to work, who are willing to be employees for the rest of their lives, right? You need that.
because it's like it's one of those things. Like now, as we're hiring different people to do different stuff in our business, I'm like, man, had I spent all my time talking about how bad a job was, no one would want to come work for me.
Exactly. No, I fully agree with that. And I actually think that up until a certain point, like if I think about myself personally, I think that there was a part of me that honestly, I felt like my revenue potential or my earnings would be capped at a certain point for the lifestyle that I wanted if I stayed in the career, versus with a business, you have the opportunity to grow it as much as you want, right? And so I think for me personally, that was the motivating factor, is that there's only so much revenue or money I can make from my career. So I need to start thinking about, hey, if I'm trying to live my life on this level and the money I'm making is on this level, like, all right, something's got to fill the gap. So whether it's, the investment properties or whatever it is that we're doing. So I think for me, that's what the motivator was. But I think what a lot of people have to realize, and we talked about this in the past, is for a very long, maybe for the first couple of years of your career, you probably will make more money in your career than you would if you started a business. And again, of course, it's all subject to the type of business. But I think some people don't have appreciation for that. Is just you may get to a certain point where, yeah, you're like, okay, I'm capped at this point of what I could make. Depending on how high you want to go in your career. But I do think there needs to be an appreciation for the fact that, hey, there is a lot of structure when it comes to having a career that is implemented for you, that as a business owner, you have to implement for yourself. And so I think even when people talk about, like, and I say, when people talk about, being an entrepreneur and all the benefits and all these great things, going back to it, like if you're trash talking a career, if you don't even have the discipline, the structure that you need for yourself in your own career, you can't do that as a business owner. You're going to fail miserably, right? And so I just think for me, that has been, honestly, of this whole journey, the biggest lesson that I've learned, where I'm like, you know what, regardless of whether I'm in a career or not, like going through this journey with Terrell has really taught me, like, okay, you really need to have that. If you ever want to come back and do this again, you need to be able to set that level of structure and discipline for yourself. And I think that it's doing it in a setting where that already exists is a great advantage, because it shows like you're learning from the environment that you're in. You're kind of going through it, setting it up for yourself. So when you do branch into doing entrepreneurship, you already have a structure for that. And I don't think people appreciate that. Again, respecting everything that having a career comes with, but also understanding that there's a ton of structure that you're not going to get as an entrepreneur.
I mean, and I think for a lot of people that are interested in becoming an entrepreneur, I think what they don't realize, like you said, a lot of that structure, those lessons, those fundamentals that you need to have in place to be successful as an entrepreneur. I mean, a great training, the way I looked at it, because even when I came out of college, I always knew there was part of me that wanted to own my own business. And I wasn't sure exactly what type of business, but I knew that, hey, I don't really know a whole lot about business. That wasn't my background. So I looked at the jobs that I took as the opportunity for me to learn. It's kind of like now I was getting paid to be a full-time student.
Exactly.
I mean, like when I came out of college, like my first job out of college was gonna pay me to learn. Like I came out and I worked in public accounting, which part of the reason I liked it, because, it gave me a chance. I'm like, what other scenario would you find where a company is going to pay me, a young 20-something, early 20s, who knows nothing about the real world, but they're going to pay me to go in and audit and learn from all these different companies that I was auditing. And every company that I went to, I would pay attention to. How are they running this process? How does this work? Okay, how are they making money? Like how do they move their resources around to make sure that the company can make money? And I was learning that from so many every company I went in to audit, I would have to audit their processes and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's one of the fundamental things that you're going to need if you're going to grow a sustainable business. Because I think where people kind of get it confused is, when people go into entrepreneurship, I think people just believe, hey, the product will build my business. And I'm just like, nah, it's your processes are what build your business. Your processes will determine the type of results that you get.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have good processes, then you're probably going to find yourself either working really, really, really hard, doing all the work yourself, which means you'll never be able to scale and grow, or you're going to find yourself stuck and you're just going to hit a ceiling very quickly. Because I think, to the point you were talking about, like, when I laugh when people talk about, in entrepreneurship, the income is unlimited. I'm like, that's not true. I'm like, I'm like, when most people talk about entrepreneurship, what they are really talking about is self-employment. And I'm like, you're just talking, I mean, pretty much, because in self-employment, you go from, you used to work for a company, now you just own a job when you're self-employed, because all of it depends on you. It's when you start to actually build a business, like with a business, the income is unlimited, because the business is built on processes and people that you have in place that can help, move the product at a scale. That's when income becomes unlimited. Because even, I think, for an example, like when I would talk to different doctors and stuff, like doctors who work in a hospital compared to doctors who start their own practice, a lot of times the average doctor who starts their own practice doesn't make that much more money than a doctor who's working in the hospital.
Yeah, why would you want that stress?
I mean, and when you think about like all the risk and stuff, because if you're an independent doctor, you got to have your own legal team. You got to have your own policies. You got to be the one that hires all the people. You got to be in charge of getting all your clients in. Whereas if you worked at a hospital, you just show up for the procedure and stuff like that. Yeah, you got to deal with the office politics, but it's just like, when you think about it, like, that's why, like, when I work with like doctors or lawyers, one of the biggest things that we work on is, all right, what kind of processes do we have in place to actually run the business side of things?
Right. And I think that's honestly something that's not talked about often. And that's a big lesson that I learned, is what process do you have and what process are you establishing? That's something that I learned from you, because I think that's probably been the biggest distinguisher for you in how fast the business has grown, is the process. And I think, a lot of people are like, okay, well, that's what it is. But I mean, I think it's applicable even in your career, because even one of the things I had to learn even in my career as a leader is just like, if I don't have a solid process, then all the work comes in and gets stuck at this level, and I'm not able to effectively bubble it down to my team, which means I end up working all these long hours and my team doesn't have anything to do, right? So it's part of the process of how are you establishing and firming that. And I think that's extremely important. But we only have a few more minutes, so I want to talk through any other lies or factors, because I know you mentioned that was the last one, but I just want to make sure, if there's anything else you would like to address with the audience, that we can share that.
There is, but I do think that there's some tremendous value I want to give to the audience on something you said about, with career. One of the things I've learned, and you and I, we talked about this, was, and I think it's a lie that a lot of people have in that are pursuing the career path, because, if we think about it, the mindset you have as an entrepreneur, as a business, well, I'll say the mindset you have as an employee is one thing. Mindset you have as an entrepreneur is another thing. But the mindset you have as a business builder is on a completely different level.
That's good.
And I think what happens is, some people, they want, like, when you see people like driving Ferraris, taking these fancy vacations, they are a business builder. They aren't an entrepreneur. Now, they may have entrepreneur in their title, but they are a business builder. And what I've seen happen a lot of times is people go from a career, they try to take that mentality and be successful as an entrepreneur, and so it's like, you're trying to be successful as an entrepreneur with an employee mindset. That's mistake number one.
Right.
And then I think the mistake number two is that they eventually learn how to be an entrepreneur, which in essence, a lot of times is a lot of, grind, hustle, and it's a lot of self-employment thinking. So they learn how to be an entrepreneur, but they want the business builder results. So they're trying to be a person who's building a business thinking like an entrepreneur. And it's just like,
that's not gonna work.
There's a tweak that you got to make.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of people have to grasp that. But I think even just knowing that the lessons you can grasp from a business builder can also be used to help you in your career. Because kind of like what you and I talked about, like the crazy story that people believe or that people are taught is how you move up in your career is you make yourself indispensable. You make, yourself kind of like the center of like people need you. Whereas
that's the recipe for death.
I mean, that may make sense if you only want to reach a certain level, but if you want to go up, to a level of leadership in any company, you almost have to think more like a business builder, because you then have to be able to take all that you're good at. How do I empower the people on my team to be good at that, which makes the business grow to where it's like, once you get to a certain level of leadership within your career, you actually have to think more like the business builder than an employee. Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people, as they're going through their career, they hit this ceiling because they never learn how to think like a business builder. Yep. And so for us, one of the things that I like is that, hey, I've gone from the career standpoint to the entrepreneur of hustling, doing it all myself. And now, a business builder, to where it's like the lessons that I'm learning, sharing it back with you, because you're still over here in your career, which all the stuff that I'm sharing with you that I'm learning in building a business is helping you become an even more effective director and executive in your career, to where it's just like, hey, we can win at both levels, because there is a certain level of leadership that you reach in your career where the amount of money you make there, it gets to a ridiculous level.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I'm looking forward to that. Okay. No, but I think it's great. I think I guess just in closing out this discussion, I think for us, transparency and honesty of where we are, and I guess just having that conversation, I think really helped us. And so if you are kind of dreading having the conversation, if you're in a similar position, please talk to your spouse, because I think a part of me was afraid that Terrell would be like, look, you're not supporting me. You don't want to be part of the business. And I think it's not good for anyone if you don't really want to be there, but you're just there because you feel like you have to. He probably knows, she probably knows. So it's just be honest and have a conversation, and then you guys can go from there. But there's never, having a foundation of lies and deception is never a good foundation for anything, period.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, because your business will grow a lot faster if you have clarity and honesty about what's what. And also, I think it's just like I said, learn to appreciate all the different aspects that go into building a business. Like, if you have a situation where one couple's more focused on the business, the other one's working a job, like the person who's more focused on the business is like, don't forget to appreciate what that person's doing in their career, because the income from that career is probably helping provide stability while you're building, while you're working through the unstable phases of building a business, to where it's just like, don't disrespect the person who's in the career. It's like, learn to appreciate every aspect of your scenario, because all of that works together to provide your whole financial picture. And that's a very important part of it. So make sure you respect and appreciate that as well. So definitely thank you guys for tuning in. This is Business Talk Library. Until next time. If you'd like to see more of the Business Talk Library, be sure to watch us every week on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m.